to you. Today is Wednesday, the 24th of June. I'm checking it. Yes, 24th of June, 2026. My name is Francisco Gaffney, and this is my daily streaming all about governance, risk, compliance, and advisory boards. So we start with the model, the full model, and today I'm going to move to the right hand of the advisory board operating system. And the full model, as you see in the screen, it has four distinct milestones. The first one is scaling, the second one is predictability, is a topic that we're going to address today. At the bottom, we have systems, and on the left, we have the edge, which is a transformation, reinvention, how to make your company relevant for today's competitive market, AI, and all the rest, right? So it's not doing business today, is not what used to be. For example, SEO, if you don't know the term, search engine optimization, was the art or the technique or the capacity or skill to bring a web page through a very laborious processes to the first page for certain keywords, the first page of Google. So you have more free traffic to your offering services, etc., etc. But now what's happening is that Google is doing these snapshots of references of information before even you land into the first landing page or link to a page. So now the game is how to make your content so relevant and referenceable that Google pick and put you on that first spot on the first quarter of the page as soon as you key in, you're asking questions. So you see the things are getting more complicated, are changing the way they used to be. So SEO was in the business for many, many years. People specialized and were paying big money for specializing that thing. And now things are changing, and they're changing very, very fast, right? So this is how you need to be relevant to your business, to the environment, to your consumers, how the technology changes, how the economics changes, how the social behaviors changes. And one of the things that we are going to address today is predictability. And this is very important. We have the model here now. So it's all about your partnerships, your revenues, and your assets. I mentioned Google this because I was reading about this morning. And it's all about your assets, because your webpage could be one of your biggest assets. Now, how people know you, how they find you, how they hire your products and services, etc. So if that is changing, that is a big issue now to address in terms of the predictability of your business, how you're going to grow and how you're going to access capital. So growth, capital, and predictability. So is where we connect, as I say, partnerships, revenues, and assets. This is where many founders like yourself start to feel a strange kind of stress. And particularly if you were not aware with the SEO thing, this is a tiny portion of the whole business. Actually, in 2016, when Google panned and Penguin, I don't know if you remember that, I partnered with a business because their biggest assets was the webpage. They were selling thousands of in revenue and products per day because they manipulated, or actually what they did at the time was called keyword stuffing, their web pages. So they were always in many keywords at the first page of Google, so they could sell massively. Was a good product, was a good service, though the system, Google, I mean, at that time, when they did the algorithm changes, they lost the business overnight, completely lost it, because the only asset that they had was the web page. Now, so that means that, bearing that in mind, they were selling, they had clients, the business may have looked very healthy, but the revenue start to feel bumpy at the point it disappeared. But that might be the case for you today. Your revenue might be bumpy. The forecasts move around. The marketing and sales have a different language. How many times you heard the sales team say the leads are not good, and the marketing teams are saying we are killing ourselves to get the leads for these guys, and they are not closing. So it's a constant internal conflict of what is good and what is bad. So delivery, I'm not sure, other issues you might see is that in your own organization, the delivery knows things finance don't, and finance see things sales does not, and neither you know as the founder, and you end up translating the truth between all the teams to understand where you are standing, if you can understand that at all. So this is a predictability growth issue. That's a problem. And let's take a look at 3 problems with this and how we can solve them. Problem number 1 is that the business sells standalone services instead of proper revenue ecosystems. What I mean with this is that every deal feels new, every client journey feels different. The team works hard, but the path from interest to trust to purchase to repeat revenue is not clear enough. The second problem is that the pipeline cannot be trusted. So the numbers exist, but the definitions are weak. One person says the opportunity is qualified, usually sales teams. Another person thinks it's only a conversation, usually the managers or the directors that are looking into the forecast. I said, these are conversations, it's dragging for too long. They are not really qualified leads. And one team may count revenue when the deal is signed, right? So say, okay, revenue, click, is cash in, not yet. Another seems that the problem when delivery starts, because actually it doesn't matter if the contract is signed, the invoice issued, then you go into production, service delivery, or onboarding, and then you have another problem. And problem number 3 is that the assets are not being used to warm up the market. So the business has knowledge, methods, tools, template diagnosis, and insights, but they sit in people's heads or in old folders, spreadsheets, computers, personal computers, phones, binders. So the sales team has to keep proving trust from scratch every single day. And that is a very, very stressful situation and a lot of anxiety there. So just imagine this. I'm going to put a picture here to represent how it looks like. Yes, it might not be the representation of your business, but it's a representation of the business situation for many companies. A shop with good products, but no clear entrance, no signs, no price labels, no helpful first steps, and no follow-up after someone buys. That is the shop on the left. So people go there and say, what exactly I'm doing here? I understand what I'm seeing, but actually where I start, what is a helpful hand that's going to guide me through acquire these products or services? On the other hand, but actually people might buy from you anyway, but you will still keep wondering why sales feels harder than they should. But on the right hand side, you might see that actually it's a process, it's a system, it's a clear path to acquire things. Your offerings are very clear, very organized, and you have a very well sequenced to conversion, as they call it, etc., etc. So I think that this picture pretty much represents what many owners feel when they see people are there, they can buy, they understand what they're offering, but they don't. And on the other hand, you have people or businesses that are very clear, they have a very good, with the same amount of contacts, connections, sales efforts, they have 3, 4, or more times business of the other. That is about predictability. So that's how people start to understand how your business works and how do business with you, right? So let's go back to the model. As a board advisor, what I would propose to consider is the following. Use the advisory board to design the revenue journey, not just review the sales numbers. A predictable business should have at least 4 clear steps. The number 1 is something useful that opens attention without pressure. A guide, a diagnostic, a short insight, a simple tool, a practical checklist, you name it. So this is in the digital world, but you can go to fairs, you can go to talk to prospect, you can go into tenders, but having all these elements there very clear outlined is very easy to understand what you're offering. And the second thing is a low friction first step that lets the prospect test your trust. So a workshop, a review, a scorecard, a short assessment, a smaller paid entry point, your social media presence that build trust. Remember that actually people need to see you several times, particularly as a first-time buyer, before they can say, okay, I'm going to connect with these people because I'm interested. I'm looking for this kind of products or services. And the third thing is to the core offer. What are you offering? The main solution that solves the real problem that they have. And the fourth one is a way to keep serving the customers or the client after the main work is done. So ongoing support, monitoring, advisory, assurance, performance tracking, or managed services, and you name it. So I guess that you get the picture. I mean, the image that I presented you earlier is easier to understand. This is not about a fancy product language, right? It's about making the customer journey easy to understand. So people are too confused with too many offers, bombarded every day. And I've seen stat that the average American, I think I see something like 350 advertisings per day. This is a lot of information. So the clearer, the simpler, and the right to solution that you present your products, even the better. So the advisory board helps test that journey. The question that might come up in this conversation will be, is the first step useful enough? Does it attract the right people? Does the low friction offer qualify demand, right? So does the core offer solve the problem worth paying for? Does the follow-on offer increase client value without feeling forced? And then comes the dashboard. And what you have in the dashboard is the advisory board should request a single trusted revenue view, not a 5 version of that. Just one version. So one language for pipeline, one language for conversion, one language for churn, one language for client value, one language for recurrent revenue, and one language for handover. This could be 3 or 4 different things in one screen, but actually very clear what happened, where we are today, and we're going to next, based on the data that we have today. Based on the data. And data, remember, the quality of the data is always the same. If you feed data that is a bad guess, or I think about it and I think that the number would be around this figure, that is not factual data. That is pretty much a finger in the air, and that is pretty bad data. So be careful when you feed your systems, because many of the problems that you have is the decisions that you made based on dashboards that have bad data. So all the rest is obviously going into the wrong direction. So this matters because when you look into capital flows, how the confidence they are in terms of predictability, they see these presentations or this information so many times that they, in one screening of a dashboard or a spreadsheet or whatever you are presented to the capital, it could be a lender, could be a stockholders asking for more investment, or new investors, or the bank, they will understand right away if that information might be trustable, predictable, or something actually might need a review, or literally on the spot will be declined because they already understand actually that's not right. So if leadership cannot explain revenue clearly, investors, as I mentioned, lenders and shareholders will feel that uncertainty and won't let the capital float over to the business. So what do you gain working with me? 3 things: in business outcomes, differentiators, and risk reductions. In terms of outcomes, it's a more predictable commercial engine. The business knows how attention turns into trust, how trust turns into revenue, and how revenue turns into a long-term value. And this is very, very specific business outcomes. And in this particular model, the milestone is predictability. So how to make all these predictable. In terms of differentiators, is that the advisory board operating system connects revenue to assets, partnerships, and capital. So you get access to an international advisory board, faster implementation than hiring one single executive, lower overhead than the big consulting firm, no talent locked in, so we can swap the team members as we need it for very specific activities every 6 months or every year. And in terms of the risk reduction is the bad forecasting. Weak revenue definition create very poor decisions. So a clear advisory rhythm that helps the business spot pipeline risk earlier. And when you do that, your business, I can assure you, is going to change big time. So one action you can take home today, and it's doable in 30 minutes or less. Draw your client journey in 4 plain steps, right? how do they first notice you? How do they first test trust on your business or your services? What is the main thing they buy? And what do they buy after if the relationship works? So if you cannot answer those 4 questions, your revenue model is harder than it needs to be. So it's, again, the 4 questions is: how do they first notice you? How do they first test trust you? How is the main thing they buy from you, and what they buy after if the relationship works? So it's 4 things. And when I say you, I mean your business, your organization, etc., etc. So let's pause here for today and reconvene tomorrow, because tomorrow I'll move into the bottom of the advisory board operating system, which is systems, meaning your workflows, the operating procedures. And I will look at how controls, data we mentioned today, governance, risk and compliance, and intellectual property turn a busy business into a more resilient one. And if you are a leader, a founder, or in the executive team of a company of 50 employees or more, with more than 100 million revenue, and you want an advisory board that helps make revenue more predictable, let's have a 30-minute chat so I can understand. Actually, I would love to understand where you're coming from, where you are today, and where you're going. So, so that we can design an advisory board that brings you 26% revenue increases and 18% more productivity, with a faster implementation than a hiring one executive, a lower overhead than a big consulting firm, no talent locked in, and a swappable members every 6 months. Have a great day. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thank you, and bye-bye.